today's episodes, we got some opinions. Opinions on cancel culture and our first 1-star review. We're going to share thoughts and opinions on all of it.
That was an interesting one, man. I was surprised about that one.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. But first, I asked Dr. Glen, we had this metaphor that we used, going hard in the paint, when we talked about, the Jordan Peterson conversation. I was like, Dr. Glen, what's another metaphor that's like that one, but it's not basketball related?
I thought you wanted a basketball related one.
Oh, well, either way, you came up with what?
Back that ass up, man.
Pretty sure that is not.
If you're going to go hard in the paint, you're going to back your ass into the paint and go hard.
Okay.
Like Shaquille O'Neal, barbecue chicken. He said, this is barbecue chicken, man.
We're going to stop here. I've played a lot of basketball. This is where we need you guys to weigh in this. Is that actually a basketball phrase, or is it more appropriate for
song.
A music video?
It's a music video with Juvenile. You back that ass up, and you can back that ass up into the paint.
Well, Dr.
You got to
Glen,
go into the paint.
Dr. Glen, and again, sometimes we forget that you're a doctor, but Dr. Glen says that this is specifically a basketball metaphor, and that's what I'd like to know. Please comment on the video and let us know.
Go hard in the paint, or you want to back that ass up? I think the choice is clear, man.
All right, you know what? We're going to get straight into this. Let's talk about thoughts on cancel culture. We're also going to talk about, along with it, just the first 1-star review that we got, which is kind of like, it's related. Before we jump in, I want to say, if you guys are new here, welcome to 12-Week Relationships. This is your place for better relationships in weeks, not years, and for strange metaphors. We got it all covered.
We got it.
Also, if you guys are just joining, be sure to join the newsletter at 12weekrelationships.com. This is where we have handwritten messages that are delivered right to your inbox each week. They're really solid tips and insights that, we just want everyone to have. It's all value, and we promise not to be spammy or share your info with anyone. Very respectful, the way that we would like our emails to be used, which doesn't often happen that way. But why don't we talk first on the topic of cancel culture? I feel like we need to kind of go through the basics of it. But what is it to basically cancel?
You're taking people out, man. You're going hard in the paint. Okay, I'll stop.
Do you want to say the other one? No, we're not gonna say the other one. Yes. So this is the forced removal of a person, an organization. Why does sometimes it feel like I gotta be the professional? I'm not even the doctor. But it feels like I gotta bring you back in line.
You gotta hold it together, man. That's part of the job, man.
Frankly, it's kind of nice that Dr. Glen is a normal person. I just gotta say. But anyway, the forced removal of a person, an organization, a product, a brand, or anything that a group of people finds offensive. This is cancellation. And you found this interesting research. Pew pew.
Yeah, the Pew research. And basically,
it actually is spelled P-E-W.
P-E-W, right? And basically they found, I believe it's 58% are saying that basically it's a form of holding people accountable. So some people view it in a positive way. So it's a good thing, right? So if you do something wrong, you need to be accountable for it. But on the flip side, 38% are saying that basically it's a form of punishment. And oftentimes it's a form of punishment that is often not deserved.
I always find these studies interesting. So Pew Research asked broad audience, they got 58% feel that, which is crazy to me. 58% of people felt like this holds other people accountable. 38% believe that it's a form of punishment. What about the extra 4%? There's 4% that's missing.
I guess they didn't answer.
They didn't answer.
Guess they didn't answer.
Okay.
Or they just didn't want to be canceled themselves, so they gave no response.
Is this a trick survey?
Yeah. I don't want to be canceled, so I'm not going to answer.
I found that fascinating that almost 60% of people think that this is something positive. Because I would say that my own opinion on this is that it is not positive at all. I mean, there are cases where it makes sense, but in general, cancel culture is not a positive thing. But I guess that's why we're here, to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, there's extreme forms where I think it's appropriate, but in general, like in that middle space, I think a lot of times like it goes off the rails.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be.
Well, the first thing that I wanted to mention is that when it comes to supporting cancel culture, I find that most of the time the people behind this thought process have a very black and white way of thinking, or sometimes we might call it binary thinking or black and white thinking. But basically, it's that you believe that everything is cut and dry, that you're either good or you're bad. There's either this side or the other side. And that when it comes to even like negative dialogue, that there is no positive benefits of it. You only see it as a one-sided thing. So I find people get really adamant about canceling someone, not recognizing there are many positive attributes of allowing even a kind of crazy person to just be crazy.
Yeah, give them the space to do so it brings it to the light and we can all see it and have discussions about it.
Yeah.
But like even when you're describing people like in terms of cancel culture or having binary thinking, in their mind they may think that they're doing a public good or they're providing a service, and maybe they are, but there's a lot of consequences if you have that mentality because you're very closed-minded, you're not open to discussions, and there's an anger and hostility there that it's not really going to serve anyone. You're actually becoming part of the problem then.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about the pros, the cons, and specifically dangers that we recognize in this kind of behavior. But I thought that a really great example of this black and white thinking is actually our 1-star review. So that's what we're going to talk about first. So I'm going to read this here. So this is our first 1-star review. Please don't give us more. We don't.
Yeah, we would like the 5-star reviews.
In fact, if the person that left this wants to, reevaluate, we would be completely supportive about that. But here's what it says. We recently did two episodes actually, on Jordan Peterson's lecture, Butchers and Liars. And so the review's in reference to that. It says, I loved your take on relationships, I loved your take on relationship help up until the most recent episode supporting any aspect of Jay Peterson's work, which is interesting because we kind of we came at it from both sides. Like we both kind of supported part of his statements, but also we're like in the middle, like the way that he approached it and things. But it says, I work in healthcare as an ethicist with the opportunity to see how healthcare providers and networks navigate gender reassignment. To make generalizations based on rare occurrences and extreme views, then apply them to a larger percentage than what is real is not only false, but is spreading its own dangerous agenda, which we would agree with.
Agreed.
99% of providers have a program in place for counseling and time to allow responsible decisions. Even then, very rarely perform gender modification on children younger than teens. Although you called out some extreme views, I'm surprised you two would even have his name mentioned within your work. So this is binary thinking in a nutshell. Because, well, let's go through one by one, right? You're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I love the podcast up until we discussed this one topic.
Which she didn't approve of at all. Yeah.
Which we have close to 70 episodes right now. So you're going to toss out the 68 episodes that you liked and give us a 1-star review. And this is fine, by the way. I'm not criticizing, fair game. If you guys want to, hop on and review and do whatever, that's fine. This is like what, that's on you, right? So it's not that side of it, but it's to say that like, well, if you were to look at it as a percentage and you appreciated 68 videos or 68 podcast topics and you didn't like the 2 which were on the same topic of Jay Peterson, it was a follow-up, then from a percentage standpoint, that's like a 97%.
97. That's going hard in the paint, slam dunk, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You really had to work that in, didn't you?
I did, man. Because that's almost 100%.
That's a 97%.
That's right.
But we got a 1-star. And if there was a 0, he or she probably would have given us a 0 on this side, right? Which is a perfect example of binary thinking. It's either good or it's bad. And because of that one thing, it's bad.
Yeah. And it takes, like you said, it takes away 68 or 69 episodes that we did on relationships. And basically, I think what she was saying is, just stick to relationships. Why did you even bring this person to the light and have this discussion? That's it. You're done.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a he or she, by the way. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know
He or
what
she.
name
I'm
was.
sorry.
But yes. So the other thing is that we actually agree with what you're saying. Like it is, and you very much supported that side. Like what she's saying, you basically said in the course of the dialogue was that for most of these people that choose this is a very well thought out decision.
Yeah, it's well thought out. And then you have counselors there. You go through the process. You have to make a really informed decision. You need a lot of support. Like all of that we were saying, like that was the point that I was coming from. Like I felt like for the most part there is responsibility there.
Correct. And we also, both of us kind of disagreed with the approach of how he was, having this dialogue with the religious, overture of the message itself, to kind of the extreme language and the way that he's approaching it. And there was also like a lack of, clarity. Like he kept saying prepubescent, but are we really talking about, people that are under the age of 18? Because you and I could both kind of stand behind, like wait till someone's 18 and allow them to make this decision as an adult before, but there was a lack of clarity. So what's strange is that we agree with this standpoint, and yet that was completely missed. Maybe because, well, I'm surprised you two would even have his name mentioned within your work.
Yeah. And that was a level of disappointment. So how could you do that? You disappointed me.
And this brings me to the other side of it too, which is like, it seems like a lot of people, I guess Jordan Peterson is a very polarizing figure, right? If you listen to his lectures and his material objectively, he makes a lot of good points. I don't agree necessarily with a lot of them. I don't agree with all of them. And I don't necessarily agree with how he presents a lot of them. I particularly have major issues with how he communicates in the aspect of like, it's so tangential and difficult to understand. And so often it's just lacking in clarity and too many words to say something that could be far more simple. So I have a lot of issues in terms of like some of the opinions and also the way that he speaks. But at the same time, I can also recognize that there's a lot of really good topics that and viewpoints that he's offered. And more specifically, I think the most positive aspect of Jordan Peterson is the fact that he's saying what he thinks. He's being honest. And that's what I would hope and want for everybody. Say what you think and be honest. I don't care so much that your opinion is right or wrong. I can decide that for myself. But to stand up in the face of criticism and to continue just, discussing and dialoguing, and I think that's so incredibly important. And I think that's the biggest benefit of what he's doing.
Yeah. And, everyone has their own opinions, but I don't think he's causing harm in the sense that it's hurting people to the point where it's causing a lot of damage to society. It's having discussions. Mm-hmm. It's controversial. They're really strong opinions, but it's opening a dialogue. And I feel like that's okay. That's not a cause of harm.
It's not just okay. It's necessary. I mean, they are deeply sensitive topics, controversial topics, but we need to be able to discuss them. It's only through the dialogue that we change our opinions and we learn and we see different perspectives. And I don't know much about JP other than just, I've listened to him for the past few years and I don't know, maybe I talked about like I probably consumed 40 hours or so of his content. I don't know much of him as a person or what he personally believes. I even thought he was Christian, and some people said that he's not Christian, which is strange. It's strange because he uses so much Christian dialogue in what he's saying. So walk like a duck, talk like a duck. You probably are a duck. But
quack, quack.
Either way, though, it's weird that people would feel so completely polarized against, having those conversations, against him being a name, like against this, that we would even have his name mentioned with it. Why would that surprise you when he's a psychologist, when he's very well renowned, when, he's talking about very relevant and deep topics that are worth discussing? Why is that a surprise?
No, I agree. And the crazy thing is the review itself. I mean, besides the review, and then like, why did we choose him? That this person educated us and let us know about like the work that's being done and how like, there's a process to it. So that was just really great that was even shared. That was great information that was put in there. Yeah. Yeah.
The other side, there was several comments on the YouTube channel of like, you guys need to be better researched and pull this down, right? Redo this episode. These were JP fans that were like, you didn't do enough justice to. Holy cow. Like, this is the entire point of a dialogue, is to come into it and try to interpret and understand and explain something. It's not to get everything right. We know that we're not going to get everything right. We have never claimed that we're going to get everything right. The purpose of us sitting down and discussing things, particularly in long form on this podcast, is to flesh out ideas. Some of those ideas are going to stick, some of them are not. But this is the intellectual process, to sit down and to discuss.
No, I agree. And with those comments, like, that's that fine line, right? Like, instead of defending and like, oh, do your research and redo the episode, educate then.
Mm-hmm.
Help us create a healthy dialogue. Give us information that we're misunderstanding in a way that we can have more discussions about it.
Yeah. So on one side, it's like there's two different versions of extreme views there, right? On one side, it's you shouldn't even discuss this. And on the other side, it's you should discuss it, but you should get it perfect or the way that I expect you to.
Yeah, like it's the expectation that people, like, you know, as they're listening, they have an expectation of who we are. And if we don't live up to that expectation, then they're disappointed. Okay, well, that's it with you.
Mm-hmm.
That shouldn't happen that way.
So in reality, if we were to look at this is what's so strange about reviews, right? We break down reviews into 5 stars everywhere. You go to Yelp, it's 5 stars. You go to Amazon, it's 5 stars. Everything is a 5-star review. But what's funny is that the number, you know, when you go to Amazon and it's, you know, this has a 4.3 review out of 5 stars, you know, this 4.3 stars. That is composed of 5-star reviews and 1-star reviews. The majority of reviews that are submitted to something are either going to be 1 star or 5 stars. Very few land in the middle. There's very few people that are choosing, at least in comparison, 2, 3, or 4 stars, right? Which is really odd.
It shows the dichotomy. It's either all or nothing.
It's literally binary thinking.
Yeah.
Right there inside of a review. You either love it or you hate it. And I so very much dislike that about social media, because social media has broken everything down to either a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or review systems that are 5 stars, and it's either 1 star or 5 stars. And I guess that's the whole premise of this opinion and this conversation, is to understand that it's not black and white.
But also, like, this all or nothing black or white thinking it's the spectrum. It's the beginning spectrum of leading to this cancel culture space, when oftentimes maybe that is not needed.
Totally.
Yeah.
But so why don't we honor this thought process? And even though that we, you know, are opposed to cancel culture in a nutshell, not saying that there aren't certain people that shouldn't be canceled. Maybe there are exceptions, you know, but in general, it is not a positive thing. Why don't we take it from the standpoint of what we're saying, that there's positive and negatives, and we'll talk first of the pros of cancel culture.
So number one, I think from a social justice lens, when you're advocating for people that are underserved and maybe the justice system failed them, you know, cancel culture, bringing things to light through social media and educating people, that is a huge positive, right? When you're addressing racism, when you're addressing discrimination, sexism, things that are taking place that need a stand and a voice, cancel culture is excellent in that way.
Do you feel like that's, I can see how people would interpret it as that's what's happening, but let's say this, as a minority, as a person that faced a lot of racism growing up in Utah, I would have much rather had somebody stand up for me and be another voice than simply tell someone not to talk. Like all the bullies that you know I had faced growing up, the teacher or someone else saying, hey, don't say that, that doesn't mean nearly as much as someone else saying, why don't we talk about why this is so messed up and why what you're doing is so messed up? Because silencing the one bully or telling them it doesn't do anything to change their opinions. Maybe it makes it so that they don't talk anymore, but then it just leaves everybody else to continue doing what they're doing and to have the same opinions, the same thoughts, but it doesn't create a dialogue. So I'm saying, from as a child, I would have much rather appreciated someone standing up and saying, this is why that's so messed up, in front of everybody, as opposed to just telling Timmy, hey, Timmy, don't say that. That's messed up.
No, I agree. But you're also showing the degrees of things, right? So, you know, cancel culture, like having discussion and dialogues depending upon, like in that example, this should be done within that group or the individuals. Whereas cancel culture, it should be implemented in a larger context. It should be advocating for a large group of people or a bigger cause versus just like outing an individual or doing this just because you don't like them or you find them offensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just going against that. I'm kind of like offering the flip side, the devil's advocate approach of that pro is like, I don't feel like, I know that people often think that this is a form of like social justice to cancel somebody, but I don't feel like it's doing much because it allows that person, it basically cuts that person out of the dialogue, and then it allows everybody else to continue the way that they're thinking.
Well, let me ask you this, like, because this is like the basketball theme today, but Donald Sterling, the Clippers, are you familiar with him?
No.
He was a Clipper. He was the Clipper owner. I think this was like in 2013.
Oh yeah, I do remember.
And then there's a recording of him, and he's everyone knows that he was a blatant racist.
Yeah.
You know, he especially toward like the African American community and the players, he saw them as basically possessions. And then there's recordings and everything took place. But this was again, he was doing all of these racist acts. Do you feel, because he was removed through cancel culture, all of the video recordings were made available. There was outrage. Social justice communities got involved, and eventually, which is really hard to do, they had to remove him as an owner, and they did.
Yeah, I do feel like in that, I guess when I think of cancel culture, I'm thinking more so of the not being able to have a public platform anymore, like the deplatformization of somebody, like removing their ability to speak on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever social platforms exist. In that instance, yeah, somebody that's racist should not be an owner of like I do believe that in that instance, that is a form of appropriate justice.
But that person was banned though. So like to me, like that's like these two examples show the polarity of like cancel culture. Like in that example, because it's representing racism and it's representing a large community of people, that is appropriate, right?
I agree. Yeah.
But in your example, like it's not appropriate because it doesn't fit that social justice lens in that bigger context.
Yeah, I can see it from that side.
Yeah.
So from that side, yes, that does make sense. And in a situation like that one, that feels losing that person's job and taking away the ownership, that feels like an appropriate punishment for the behavior. But I think removing their ability to completely speak, like freedom of speech, like taking away, and like they could speak, but I don't know that deplatforming would necessarily be the right next step. But losing the job, which like they're owner of a basketball team that is obviously going to have plenty of minorities and different people represented on it, that makes complete sense.
Yeah, I think he was deplatformed though, right? Like his Twitter feeds or like anything that was associated with that team, he was deplatformed, I believe.
Yeah, I do think that there are extreme cases where it makes sense, but there has to be a social responsibility behind it. So like it can't just be just because you don't like something, like you were saying. Yes.
Yeah.
So the other piece, another pro, right? It gets the person to consider. This is one of the things that was listed in. There's a couple different articles that talk about this, but it gets people to consider the statements that they're making. Like it gets them to rethink their thought process. I could see that going both ways.
How so?
Like Donald Sterling. If someone is racist through and through, they might stop saying racist things publicly or openly. Do you think he still believes it?
Well, the only reason it got out is because his girlfriend at the time recorded it, and then it was released, or else no one, I don't think there was any other. And then he went on public after that, but yeah, that was because it was privately recorded.
But do you think what I'm saying is, do you think his opinion like actually changed?
No.
I don't think so either. I think in most of these cases, like they just keep believing what they're going to believe.
They're just going to do what they're going to do. Yeah.
So we have it listed as a pro, but again, I don't know if it does that. It gives a voice to the disenfranchised. That's possible.
I agree. And oftentimes, especially with things, like you have the Black Lives Matter movement or things that were injustices, bringing it to the forefront and using social media to address things, I feel like that can be a positive for sure.
Yeah. It exposes racism, sexism, other types of, major things. I mean, it does do that, but at the same time, just...
Let me ask you. So, counseling someone for a larger cause and then you deplatform that person that's maybe not like they are the ones that are inciting it. Do you agree with that?
They are the ones that are inciting it. So I guess the reason why, you mean, like, give me an example. Like, what are you?
Well, let's go back to Donald Sterling. So let's say he did have like a Twitter account and Instagram and all these accounts, and then he was removed from ownership, and then they deplatformed him. Do you feel like in that example that would be appropriate?
I don't know the context of everything that was. I remember briefly reading about it, so I don't know if I'd be able to give a good opinion on it. I think in the case of like him making extreme racist views, being the owner of a basketball team that has multiple ethnicities, that's pretty wild. Deplatforming, I mean, I guess that could make sense from the standpoint of like, if I'm Twitter, if I'm YouTube, if I'm these different platforms, it's less about removing his ability to speak and more about, I just don't want you to be on my platform. Like, I don't want people like you around me. And to that extent, I would agree. Like, I would do the same thing. You know, like if someone like that were in one of our communities, I'd just be like, I don't want you in our community, you know? Unfortunately, those communities are very much associated now with freedom of speech because that's where people speak and communicate and whatnot. But I can understand it from that standpoint.
Yeah, but you're right. Like, there is still very nuanced though, right? Because what if he never put anything racist out there on those platforms? So technically on those platforms, he didn't do anything wrong. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It's a slippery slope.
It's tough. In that case, it's extreme enough that it makes sense. In other cases, the majority of cases, I would say probably don't make sense.
And that's the point. Like, it's a serious thing to cancel someone out, and if you're going to do it, it should be for a bigger cause, and it shouldn't just be done just because you want to do it.
Yeah. The other sides of like the pros of it gets people to think before they speak and it holds people accountable. Well, there's very much cons to that side too, and that's kind of what we want to get into next. So what are the cons of cancel culture? I want to list out the cons that we think about, I think, simply, the ones that are listed in articles and that are easy to come up with, right? It often leads to bullying.
Yeah, you got a lot of online bullying, trolls,
violence,
right? Threats, those keyboard warriors behind the scenes, and they don't realize the damage that they're doing to people. And it can, oftentimes, like, you hear all those cases of cyberbullying that leads to suicide, right? Mm-hmm. It can be very, very damaging.
So those are the sides that are kind of easy to see. Now, we listed a separate topic of the dangers of canceling. So there's cons of canceling, and then what I would say, like, the dangers go a little bit beyond that. I think there's an extension to kind of how we're influencing society as a whole through cancel culture. The first thing that I would say is that when you delete a dialogue, I think it removes a lot of, I'm going to give you an example. The best way to hold someone accountable is to leave the bullshit that they said up and to allow people to see it and to allow people to respond to it. By deleting from the conversation, you're basically, like, when someone's canceled and deplatformed, it might be effective right now, but 5 years or 10 years from now, you see these people pop back up because nobody remembers them. Nobody remembers what they said. It was deleted, it was deplatformed, and then they start doing damage all over again.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with you. Like, you should bring it to the light and then just have it be exposed, and then let it be for what it is and just have discussions about it. And eventually, if you do it in that way, it'll eventually just kind of die off.
Yeah, like if you leave it up, enough people will see it that they'll go, this person's an asshole. I'm not gonna, have anything to do with them. And they'll do it on their own, and it'll stay because there's so much of this bullshit that they've put in the air that, like,
I agree.
10 years from now, we're not going to forget it.
Yeah, because you have to see the long game. If you just see the long game, it'll eventually die off versus like being reactionary, and then you're keeping it alive and it gets more sensationalized and more people are watching it. It just stays alive longer, and it gives this person more authority and power.
Yeah. The next danger that I was going to say is, like, on the lines of it holds people accountable or it makes them think before they speak. what I think it actually does long term is it makes people more manipulative, because the people that are narcissistic enough to go out and say this type of stuff, to believe this type of stuff, I don't think they're the kind of people to really evaluate and be introspective and to think about. What I think they will do is they're going to learn how to tailor their message in a way that is more palatable. I think the people that are, someone sees Andrew Tate get canceled, they're not going to change their beliefs because they were a hardcore Andrew Tate supporter, right? They're not going to, and just so, everyone has context for this, Andrew Tate was one of the recent ones that was deplatformed for a lot. The guy's kind of a dick in many, many ways, but very extreme opinions on what men should be, what women should be, and just, all that kind of stuff. You'd say, I'd probably put him in the category of like extreme traditional views on sex and masculinity and femininity and all of it. But the people that are supporting that message, they don't stop supporting it because Andrew Tate got canceled. What they do is they learn how to manipulate better. They learn how to tailor the message better. They learn how to say certain things and avoid others. They learn how to be better at manipulating and spouting what they believe. It doesn't change the belief.
True. No, I agree with you. Like they, like they're going to hold on to their beliefs and they're going to be much more manipulative. Okay, so going back to the Andrew Tate example, do you feel like it did more harm than good then? Is that where you're kind of going with that? Like, I don't know. So he was deplatformed from everything? Is that what happened to him?
I think everything. I think TikTok removed him. I don't know what the order was, but one after another, each platform basically removed his stuff. I mean, you see his stuff and I'm, first thing you're like, this guy's kind of an asshole, and I haven't seen all of his stuff, to be honest. So I've only seen like the clips and things that get thrown around. I don't like the guy. Like he is spouting a lot of advice that is really bad. He's kind of a dick. I don't know that he's said anything or done anything that would merit deplatforming him.
Do you feel like from like a social justice lens that he's disenfranchising a community? Is he disenfranchising women, in your opinion, based on what you know of him?
Oh, that's a tough one. I disenfranchising, like, I feel like, to be honest, I feel like it does more harm than good deplatforming him. And the reason is that it's not because I agree with his message or I think that it should be out there. It's because I think it's turned him into a martyr. Now that he's deplatformed, everybody wants to have him on their podcast. He's becoming even more popular because everybody wants to discuss it. And so the message that everyone was trying to, you had this message previously where you could just go, this guy's a dick, stop following him. He's not educated in the right spaces and he's just spewing all this. And you could really easily say that before. And now he's getting so much more attention because of this deplatforming.
It's becoming tangential. So it's now about freedom of speech. And why did they do this to you? And you're right. It's going against all the things that he was talking about before.
Yeah, and it gives him the opportunity to, again, learn how to better manipulate.
But you brought up a good point too. Like you were saying, like the social media platform itself encourages sensationalism.
It does.
And controversy. So the system itself is equipped to reward this, but yet, we're having these discussions about why like everyone's acting out and doing all these things. It's a reaction to the system itself, which is not healthy in the first place.
That's kind of what is so insane about it, because the system itself is designed to get you views and followers based on, you either have two ways of going about it, either because people love you or because people hate you, right? It's either got to be so good that they love you for what you're creating, or it's got to be so sensationalist that they hate you for it. But that's what every algorithm feeds that. It feeds for people like Andrew Tate, he has no problem being controversial. So he goes and does that. The system promotes him and makes him big. And that's what's so weird, is that it's designed to promote things that are controversial. And then you get slammed and deplatformed if you go too far. Like there's a certain line of being controversial that you can't step over. If you step over that line, you've gone too far now. And it has nothing to do with him as a person. like from what I've seen, I don't think he's a good person. Like it's very easy to make those kind of, judgments based on just the volume of, negative stuff that he's, but at the same time, there's tons of not so great people that have social media platforms and that can have that ability to speak and to garner an audience. What makes this one so special that he needed to be deplatformed?
But once again, like you're talking about a larger context then. If the system itself is dysfunctional and promoting this, and the Andrew Tates of the world is what this is promoting, right? He's the product of the system. And then also like you can say cancel culture and everything is also a byproduct of this whole dysfunctional system. So they're the cause of it, and then they're not going to do anything to solve it. And then everyone's just kind of running around trying to solve it themselves, but you're just seeing the byproduct of all of this dysfunction.
Well, and by actually canceling and deplatforming, you've now made him a martyr, which now makes him go on to even more platforms and more podcasts.
So he's just being rewarded and rewarded. Yeah, so the system goes on and on and on.
So had it just been allowed to stay, and for more and more people to become a voice and to say, this is insane, what is being taught is insane. We actually had pieces of content. I said in one past video that we actually had one piece that was explaining one of the things that he said. It actually wasn't him. It was someone that did an interview with him like 6 months back. We did a piece on it. But had his stuff been allowed to continue, I had things that I wanted to say, like, he has a point in this area, but he's very wrong in this aspect. And here's the science to prove it. But I can't even do that now because all the stuff is removed, right? All the people that could have been voices to say this is not right, they're silenced as well.
Okay, but let me ask you this though. I know like it's a nuanced conversation, but do you feel like society is better off? I know you're talking about all the other interviews and he's a martyr, but do you feel like society's better off not having any of those things there anymore?
I don't think so, because his hardcore supporters, I think they're still there and they're still his hardcore supporters. I think the only way to undo what he was doing is to create more dialogue that goes the other way.
So just, you would have wanted him to just to stay up there and then just have other people counter and just continue to just have that discussion.
Yeah. I mean, in this case, it's like, I did see, so there's a lot of rumors and there's a lot of things that like, it's hard to kind of really suss out what was actually accurate. There was allegations of him running some sort of like, I don't know what it was, like a prostitution ring or something like that. Oh. But then he later came up and debunked it. And so who knows what is actually accurate. I think the only thing that seemed accurate about the guy was just that he would say a lot of dickish things, like a lot of things that were just off base, that were not scientifically based. And he would spout it off as this was like advice, like from a coach. This is how you live your life. And he had he's successful enough that I think young people, in particular, like teenage, naive young people see him as like, oh, he's got nice cars, he's got a nice home. And he's saying that this is the way that you got to live and you got to do this. And so they believe it, right? How much damage that's causing, I don't know. Like, I it's difficult to say, because as a young, impressionable child, I think there's a lot more dangerous things than Andrew Tate, like out there.
Yeah, for sure. But
like there's a lot of other things that should be canceled before he gets canceled, is what I'm saying.
But it's because of his popularity that's why he got canceled.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fine line. It's a really slippery slope. But to me, when you're explaining all this to me, because you know a lot more about social media than I do, the system itself needs to change.
It does.
It needs to promote healthier dialogue. It needs to promote things that are good for society. Like they need to restructure how this algorithm works.
And I don't even know if that's possible, to be honest, because the algorithm works based on human psychology, right? So you can't really change human psychology. What's sensational, what's controversial is going to naturally draw our attention more. The algorithm is just designed to follow that. Every one of them are designed to follow that. So if I get online and I talk about something healthy for 30 seconds versus if you can go and watch a train wreck for 30 seconds, people are going to want to go watch the train wreck for 30 seconds. How do you change that? If they change the algorithm to support the healthy thing, they lose viewers, they lose their audience. They lose the people that are using the app.
But you don't feel like if the intent was to promote healthier dialogue and to promote connection and community, that wouldn't be enough?
I just don't know, when you're talking about the algorithm is to support a business, and that business is to get more people on it. And so the algorithm is basically human psychology.
Controversy. It's like the worst part of our humanity. It's tribalism, it's closed-mindedness, it's judgment, it's reactionary impulses. I mean, even the phone, the way it's set up, it's going to our basic survival mechanisms, right? So it's feeding to that versus a better good or our better nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you combat that piece, because that seems more like you don't really change human psychology. What I think the best way to combat bad dialogue is with good dialogue.
But I don't think that they're changing human psychology. It's not about changing. They're manipulating human psychology. That's a difference. Like the whole social media platforming and even the phones, that's a form of manipulation.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it can kind of go both ways, right? If you hop onto one of these algorithms, if you hop onto Facebook and you only you search for puppies, you photos of puppies,
you're going to get a lot of puppies.
You only engage on photos of puppies, then you get puppies.
You get puppies,
right?
Yeah.
And so you're manipulating the algorithm in that instance. But so it goes both ways. If you engage with controversy, it just feeds you more of it. If that's what you like, then it gives you more. But the problem is that's what to an extent everybody likes. That's why drama is such a popular category of television and movies, right? We like drama in general, especially when it's not about us.
But they're the ones feeding what we like more of versus having a social responsibility to feed us different things, right? I mean, I get it. It's profit driven, it's controversy driven, but there's also, on a bigger scale, there has to be something that's beneficial to humanity, right?
Kind of. That's like saying
you can be profitable and, not manipulate or try, because this is where all the closed-mindedness is coming from too. If you're getting fed only things that you like, then that's the only thing that you're going to see. And if you're on social media over and over and over again, you're creating people that are going to have very limited and closed perspectives.
True. It makes a perspective. It basically takes who you are and what you are and it amplifies it.
But it's creating the Andrew Tates and it's creating the cancel culture mentality. So instead of blaming other people for it, it's the system itself that's creating the cancel culture individuals and these Andrew Tate controversial figures. It's rewarding all of it while they're just profiting and watching the chaos unfold.
I just don't know how you change that system, because I would say technically it's not the system's responsibility, because the system is a business. These are all businesses, right? So unless the government said, you know what, this is no longer a business function, this is a public service now, and took it over, then you could say that, yes, now it's a public service. But all these were created as businesses, and it's a business's responsibility to generate profit. And to generate profit, they need to max number of people on there. And so to do that, they're creating, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying that that's just the nature of a business. So I don't know how you go about changing that aspect of it. But I'm saying talking only about canceling, going back to my high school experiences, my junior high experiences, it would have been so much more impactful for me when that kid jumped on my back. And there was so many examples of this, but one time this kid jumped on my back to started punching me because I'm the only brown kid in class, right? And he's saying, go back home to Iraq because this is when the Iraq war is going on. And nobody did anything about it. Now later the kid got in trouble. And the principal said, don't do that again. It didn't change any of the other bullies from doing what they were going to do. They still did the exact same thing. In fact, it probably didn't even change his opinion of what he did. But had 2 or 3 other students in that class stood up and said, get off his back, and what you're doing right now is completely wrong. You're an asshole. That would have. The voices coming up would have. So all I'm saying in this instance is that I don't think it's the system's responsibility. And I don't think in certain cases like a Donald Sterling, okay, what you've said there makes enough sense to me that yes, remove from the job, that makes sense. But in most cases, the best way to counter bad dialogue is with good dialogue.
No, I agree with you. But even your example with school, if your school was better run, don't you feel like they would have had a school meeting and discuss that the Iraq war is going on and that this is we're all Americans. And if they did that, even besides like people standing up for you, but the school itself said, hey, we're not tolerating this. This is unacceptable, and opening that dialogue and bringing it to the forefront, wouldn't that have been more powerful than actually just students helping you out?
Oh, absolutely.
Because that system is, you're changing the system.
Absolutely.
Right? And then it's bringing it to the forefront, like, hey, no bullying is being tolerated. So the people that are bullies, they're being called out, and they're being, they're being spoken to directly from a bigger system platform. That would have made more positive changes than a few people standing up for you, in my opinion.
But I think it begins more so with a few people standing up. I think systemic changes have to begin with I think it's difficult to make systemic changes without, I don't know, do you see a lot of examples where it goes?
Like, you're a good person. Like, even starting the business, there's a morality component to it. I mean, basically, you could still be profitable and still have a morality component to it. Like, they're making so much money, right? There could be a little bit more of a social responsibility, knowing that they influence so much of what takes place in society.
But I guess what I'm saying is that the system usually follows the voices of the people. So if you want to make the system change, you need the voices of the people first.
But if those people are already being manipulated by the system, then their voices are already being manipulated anyway. So they're kind of becoming voiceless anyway. So it's this loop, right? And then the kind of notion of like, yeah, well, it's on you. We're manipulating you, but it's still your opinion. You got to stand up. You're stacking all of these things against. You're taking thought away in the first place. In my opinion.
True. I mean, so in your opinion, what do you do with, well, Donald Sterling? You feel like that was the appropriate response, right?
As far as removing him as an owner and all the things that came with, absolutely. Like, in terms of cancel culture, what I'm saying is like, I don't know Andrew Tate, but I'm just saying, if it goes to the place where it's a social justice movement, it's helping an underserved community, or it's bringing to light people that are being hurt or discriminated against, then I'm all for it. Like, if this, in this, like the Andrew Tate case, if it's an individual thing because people don't like him and he's being kind of an asshole, and he's, they just don't like the things that he's saying, but it's bordered on the edge of, it's bringing dialogue, then I don't feel like this person should be canceled.
Well, I'll give you a little more context for it. Let's say, and again, I want to keep this like to just the facts. The facts are that his messages were very sexist and misogynistic, right? Those are the facts. So extremely traditional misogynistic views on men, women roles, and all this kind of stuff. And that's what he kind of became popular for. This is the way that you live your life. This is how you be a man. This is what a man does, buys nice cars, does all this kind of stuff. Is that worthy of canceling? If that were the only thing?
No, because there's a lot of things out there like that. Like, even just music videos, it promotes that, whether it says it directly or not. Mm-hmm. At the same time, if he did start a prostitution ring and all these things are going on, and there's like all these discriminatory practices taking place along with the message, okay, like, I mean, it's definitely moving it toward that direction.
For sure. If those other things are true, then it makes a lot more sense, for sure. The other thing that I wanted to say about cancellation is that for everybody that just wants to share an opinion, for everyone that just wants to be, see, what I don't like about cancel culture is it makes everybody more manipulative.
I agree.
I feel like personally, it's safer for me just to know that you're an asshole, that I shouldn't associate with you, because you share these things publicly, and I can go, you know what, you're someone that I completely disagree with. We have completely differing values, and it's very transparent. That to me feels safe. But instead, cancel culture has made everybody more manipulative. People are afraid to share even just opinions that, on a political belief or on a, anything. Not even necessarily harmful opinions, just their opinions. They're afraid to share those things. So everybody learns to better manipulate each other, and it makes it more difficult to kind of figure out who do I actually share values with and who do I not, and what's actually happening. Like, we all just get better at tailoring the message.
No, I agree with you. It shrinks people down. So you're creating more and more followers, and then the people that are courageous enough to make these controversial stands, they continue to be rewarded, as long as they just don't toe that line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other side of that too is that I think it does long-term create softness in us as people, as a society. Like, another example of this is comedians, right? Comedians, their job is literally to be offensive, to stand up and to make jokes of things that that are controversial, to make jokes of things that are beliefs. Like they've done this, but that's the whole point. Like, not only is it supposed to be like, we're supposed to be able to laugh at those types of things and to be able to say, yeah, this is kind of silly, or yeah, I do take that way, and yeah, this is it's a humor that is tied to truth, right? But how many stand-up comedians get in trouble because they go too far? People try to deplatform, try to say that, no, this topic you have to avoid. This is something that you can't talk about.
Yeah, they're making all the rules.
Now, Will Smith, what's worse? For example, Dave Chappelle standing up, or any comedian standing up and saying a joke that offends transgender people, or that offends religious people, or that offends whatever, or actually going up on a stage and striking a man for telling what was a pretty harmless joke.
No, I agree.
But Will Smith didn't get deplatformed.
Agreed. And there was a discussion about it, and it was dissected into all of these different spaces about toxic masculinity and the African American culture. Like, there's all these discussions about it.
I mean, is that not the most insanely hypocritical thing that we could possibly imagine? That you're going to deplatform someone for jokes, or attempt to, but you're going to allow someone to stay for hitting another man because of a harmless joke. Like, that was literally one of the most, one of the most tame jokes that, could have been made.
I agree. And then it was a shock to see it. I think at first when I first saw it, I thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how backwards is this thought process that now we're saying that basically jokes and words like that are more dangerous than actually assaulting somebody? That is what we're saying with so much of cancel culture. That is what we're saying, that it's more harmful to have a discussion about something, to allow somebody to have a bad opinion, to allow somebody to do something that is harm. It's more that is more dangerous than actually assaulting people.
No, I agree with you. Like, it's ass backwards, and it's very, very dysfunctional.
And that's the dysfunction I think it continues to create, this softness in people, that like, we're so sensitive to every possible thing. And don't you think, like, as we go forward, isn't it just going to get worse?
Yeah, it's going to get worse. But I think, like, this is where we kind of disagree, is because you feel like the responsibility falls on the individuals more. And like, yeah, we have to do this, and we have to stay within the system, and this is not going to change. I feel like the whole algorithm and the system itself is promoting all this. It's promoting people to be more closed-minded and to be more judgmental, and then to promote controversy. So it's this, you're just staying in this loop and saying, okay, you guys fix it and have a voice. I just find that to be dysfunctional and ridiculous.
I don't disagree with you on that. I don't disagree with you with, like, I fully agree with the fact that it's a systemic problem and it's also an individual problem. All I'm saying is that I don't know where to begin as far as the systemic problem goes.
Yeah.
In terms of like a business, you would, like I said, you need to turn that thing into once a platform like Twitter, once a platform is primarily the place for public speech and public domain, maybe that needs to be taken over by the government and become an actual public service.
Or not even being taken over the government, but it's redirecting the anger and frustration. So like, instead of the Andrew Tate and taking all that hatred toward him, it's recognizing that he's the product of the system that's dysfunctional, and let's address it to the social media people, like Twitter or Instagram. Like, let's focus on them to do a better job and try to advocate for them doing a better job.
Yeah, I mean, a tweak to the algorithm, I guess. If these platforms weren't solely focused on profit, that would be the start, right? Like, maybe things that are controversial, things that are like, you're not giving them, like, that would be the simplest adjustment, that you don't allow the algorithm to feed and boost things that are so far beyond a certain place. But that again is a form of silencing, and we've heard of, like, what is it, accounts that get blacklisted or they get shadow banned, right? They get shadow banned where basically the algorithm no longer promotes what they're sharing. So it becomes this weird line of like, what's okay to talk about, what's not okay to talk about.
But I mean, in my opinion, we're already being manipulated anyway.
True.
So that's all I'm saying. So I like everything that you point up about, like, people being closed-minded or being more manipulative, or like, it gets soft like I said, I agree with everything that you're saying because that's the byproduct of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to change.
No. And I do believe that, there is certainly responsibility to change on the side of the businesses that are benefiting off of this, the social media platforms. I just don't know that they will.
No, they probably won't.
So,
and then if it starts with us, at least what I'm saying is let's be educated. Let's get off the hamster wheel and see it for what it is, that these are all byproducts. And then let's have a different discussion and try to move this in a different direction instead of just staying in the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Well, you got to do this. And okay, well, we have to address cancel culture in this way. Like, no, like let's look at it from a larger and bigger perspective.
Well, that's kind of why I'm taking it from the standpoint of voices, because I don't know that the wheel itself, I don't know if you can go and adjust the system itself. Like, we're not in control of that aspect, right? But we are in control of our voices, and we are in control of saying, like, okay, in some cases, and I guess the summary of what I'm saying here is that there are cases where someone's behavior is so extreme that canceling and deplatforming can make sense.
Mm-hmm.
There are cases like that, most definitely. But I'm saying that in the majority of cases, the best way to combat misogyny and sexism and racism and all these different, beliefs and opinions is to have more conversations about them.
Agreed.
That in most cases, it's about more voices. And that is something that we're in direct control of. We can stand up and talk about what's going on as opposed to like just trying to bury them, just trying to ignore them, asking people to cancel them. Just talk about it.
Agreed. Bring it to the light, have discussions, have nuanced discussions. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
All right. That's it for this episode. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I think that's it. This was interesting.
We've had some deep debates lately.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it.
Thanks, man.
We hope that you guys have enjoyed it as well. If you have, there are a couple things that, well, we would love. Number one, it takes no time, well, like 30 seconds of time, and no money for you guys to jump onto iTunes and to leave us a review for 12 Week Relationships. Yeah, we would appreciate that greatly. Tell us what you think about the podcast. If there's certain topics that you guys have loved, certain topics that, you want less of, that'd be great to know. Evaluate it as a whole.
Yes.
Not just one
Context
episode.
matters.
Context matters. But yeah, tell us what you think. Also, you guys can join the newsletter at 12weekrelationships.com. It's completely free. This is where we deliver handwritten tips and insights to your inbox each week. They're awesome messages, guys. We have, there's well over 2,000 people now on this newsletter, and
that's amazing.
Nobody unsubscribes, which is an awesome, marker. Like it's good. We want to deliver valuable stuff to you guys each week. It's also the best place to learn about upcoming programs. We do have one-on-one coaching available with Dr. Glen. We have a wait list for that, and upcoming coaching programs for group coaching as well. That's it for us. So we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Peace.